Rich Dad's Guide to Investing by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Introduction. Imagine you're 12 years old, walking barefoot on a warm Hawaiian beach. The waves are gently washing over your feet. Beside you is your best friend, and on his other side is his father, a man you've come to see as a second dad. He's pointing to a massive, 10-acre stretch of oceanfront property, one of the most valuable pieces of land in your entire town. And he tells you he just bought it. Your mind struggles to understand. You know this man, your rich dad, makes less money than your own father, who is a highly paid government official. Your own dad, your poor dad, could never dream of affording a property like this. So you work up the courage to ask the question that will change the entire course of your life. How can you afford to buy this land when my dad can't? Your rich dad puts his arm around your shoulder, and with a warm smile, he shares a secret that is the very foundation of how the wealthy build their fortunes. He says, "I can't afford to buy this land either. But my business can." That single sentence was the beginning of an education that isn't taught in schools. It's the story at the heart of Rich Dad's Guide to Investing by Robert T. Kiyosaki, a book that pulls back the curtain on what the rich invest in, that the poor and middle class do not. Following the monumental success of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which has sold tens of millions of copies and transformed the way people think about money, Kiyosaki takes us deeper. He shares the detailed, step-by-step guidance his rich dad gave him after he returned from the Vietnam War in 1973 with no job, no money, and no assets to his name. All he had was a dream to become a truly rich investor, not just a person with a high-paying job. This isn't a book of hot stock tips or get-rich-quick schemes. It is a guide to changing your entire mindset. It's about understanding the fundamental difference between the 90% of investors who share just 10% of the wealth, and the 10% of investors who control the other 90%. So, what you're about to hear is the roadmap that took Robert Kiyosaki from nothing to financial freedom. By the end of our time together, you will understand the 5 phases every sophisticated investor moves through. You will know the secret of the B-I triangle that turns simple ideas into massive fortunes, and most importantly, you will understand the riddle that separates the creators of wealth from the consumers of it. This is the playbook for moving from the outside of the investment world to the inside, where the real deals are made. Book summary. The journey to becoming a truly wealthy investor doesn't start with money. It starts with a choice. When a young Robert Kiyosaki came back from the war, he was at a crossroads. He was a decorated pilot, and a lucrative, secure career with the airlines was waiting for him. It was the path his highly educated father, his poor dad, had always dreamed for him: go to school, get good grades, and find a safe, secure job with good benefits. It's the path that promises security. But Robert had also spent his childhood under the mentorship of his rich dad, who taught him a completely different philosophy. Rich Dad's advice wasn't about finding a job, it was about creating them. His lessons weren't about climbing the corporate ladder, they were about owning the ladder. So, when Robert sat down with his rich dad in 1973, he was presented with a fundamental choice that every single one of us faces, whether we realize it or not. Rich Dad explained, "When it comes to money, people have 3 core priorities: to be secure, to be comfortable, or to be rich. All 3 are important, but the order in which you prioritize them determines your financial destiny. Most people," he explained, "choose security first. They want that steady paycheck, that guarantee. Once they feel secure, they focus on being comfortable, a bigger house, a nicer car. For them, becoming rich is a distant, third priority, a dream they might get to one day, but they'll never sacrifice their comfort or security to achieve it. This," Rich Dad said, "is why only 3 out of 100 people ever become truly rich." Robert, having seen the results of both his father's lives, one struggling financially despite a great career, the other building an empire from nothing, made his choice. He decided to put being rich first. Security and comfort would follow, but they would not be the driving force of his decisions. This was the first, and most important, step in his mental preparation. It was phase 1 of Rich Dad's plan. With that choice made, Rich Dad introduced the next mental shift. He said, there are only two kinds of money problems in the world: not enough money, and too much money. Which problem do you want? This question might sound simple, but it goes deep into our programming. Most of us are raised in families where the only problem we know is not enough money. We're taught to think in terms of scarcity. We hear phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees, or I can't afford that. That mindset becomes our reality. Rich Dad's world, on the other hand, was a world of abundance. His problem was always having too much money coming in and needing to find a place to put it to work. He explained that your internal reality about money creates your external reality. If you believe money is scarce, you will live a life of scarcity. This is why lottery winners so often go broke. They suddenly have too much money, but their mind is still wired for not enough, so they unconsciously get rid of the money to return to the world they know. To become rich, you have to first change your inner world. You have to start seeing the possibility of a world where there is too much money. This shift in mindset is what allows you to see opportunity where others see risk. Rich Dad believed that the more security a person needs, the more scarcity they will have in their life. People who are creative, cooperative, and willing to learn new financial skills, however, live lives of increasing abundance. This brings us to the core engine of Rich Dad's entire philosophy, the cash flow quadrant. He would draw a simple cross on a piece of paper, creating 4 sections: E, S, B, and I. The E stands for employee. You have a job. The S stands for self-employed or specialist. You own a job? Think of a doctor or a lawyer. The B stands for business owner. You own a system, and people work for you. And the I stands for investor. Your money works for you. His poor dad's advice was to be a successful E or S. Go to school, get a secure job, or become a highly paid professional. But Rich Dad's guidance was entirely different. He said the path to true wealth lies on the right side of the quadrant, in the B and I sections. Why? Because the rules are different on that side. Especially the tax rules. The poor and middle class work for money, Rich Dad would say. The rich have their money work for them. And the B and I quadrants are where you learn how to do that. But there's a problem. Our school system is designed almost exclusively to train people for the E and S quadrants. We learn to be good employees, but we never learn how to be business owners or investors. This is why, when Robert came home from the war with just a few $1,000s saved, he was eager to invest alongside his rich dad. He asked, "Can I invest with you?" The room went silent. Rich Dad and his son Mike looked uncomfortable. Finally, Rich Dad said something that shocked Robert to his core. It would be against the law. Against the law? Robert asked, confused. Are you doing something illegal? No, Rich Dad chuckled. It's not illegal for us to invest in these deals. But it would be illegal for you. Why? Because you're not rich, Mike said gently. This was Robert's first introduction to a secret world of investing, a world governed by the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC. The SEC has rules to protect average investors from the riskiest deals. To invest in these exclusive, high-potential deals, you have to be what's called an accredited investor. At the time, this meant you had to have an annual income of at least $200,000, or a net worth of over $1 million. Robert, with his few $1,000s, was nowhere close. The very laws designed to protect him were also walling him off from the best investments in the world. As Rich Dad explained, this is one of the primary reasons the rich get richer. They get access to deals that the poor and middle class never even hear about. This realization could have been discouraging. But for Robert, it was a spark. Rich Dad then explained that being an accredited investor was just the first level. It was a qualification based on money. But there was a higher level, a more powerful one, the sophisticated investor. A sophisticated investor, he said, has the 3 E's: education, experience, and excess cash. Many accredited investors, like movie stars or doctors, have the excess cash. But they often lack the financial education and real-world experience, which is why they so often lose their money in bad deals. A truly sophisticated investor knows how to analyze deals, understand the laws, and create wealth from the inside out. And so, Robert's new goal was set. He didn't just want to be an accredited investor, he wanted to become a sophisticated investor. This decision launched him into Phase 2 of Rich Dad's plan, understanding the different categories of investors. Rich Dad laid out a 5-level hierarchy. 1. The accredited investor, the one with the high income or high net worth. 2. The qualified investor. This person understands the difference between the 2 main schools of stock market investing, fundamental and technical investing. Fundamental investors, like Warren Buffett, analyze the health of the business itself, its financial statements, its management, its position in the market. Technical investors, like George Soros, are more concerned with market sentiment and price patterns. They study charts and investor emotions. A qualified investor knows how to read both the business and the market, and can make money whether the market is going up or down. 3. The sophisticated investor. This is where things get really interesting. The sophisticated investor understands not just investing, but the laws that govern investing, tax law, corporate law, and securities law. They use the law to their advantage, maximizing returns and minimizing risk in ways the average investor can't. 4. The inside investor. This is the person who creates the investment. Instead of just buying shares in a company, they build the company. They are the entrepreneurs, the business builders. 5. The ultimate investor. This is the pinnacle. The ultimate investor is an inside investor who builds a business so successful that they take it public. They become the selling shareholder, while the rest of the world lines up to be the buying shareholders. Think of Bill Gates with Microsoft or Jeff Bezos with Amazon. Seeing this latter, Robert felt overwhelmed. He had no money and no business. How could he possibly start? Rich Dad smiled and pointed to level 4, the inside investor. This is where you'll start, he said. Even with very little money, it's possible to start on the inside. You start by building a business. This was a revolutionary idea. Most people think you need money to make money. But Rich Dad's plan was different. The plan was to create an asset, a business, that would generate the cash to buy other assets. This brings us to the 90/10ths riddle, one of the most powerful concepts in the book. Rich Dad would regularly present Robert with a challenge. He would draw a blank financial statement, the simple form with columns for income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, and he would ask, how do you fill your asset column without buying any assets? Think about that for a moment. How do you acquire assets without using money? The answer is the secret of the 10% who control 90% of the wealth. You create them. You take an idea, something from your mind, and you build it into something that generates income. This is the essence of entrepreneurship. Bill Gates didn't get rich by saving up his paycheck to buy stocks. He created an asset, Microsoft. The Beatles created assets, their songs, that still pay them royalties today. At 9 years old, Robert and Mike did this on a small scale. Rich Dad made them work for free, so they had to figure out how to make money. They noticed the convenience store was throwing out old comic books. They took that trash and created an asset, a comic book library for the neighborhood kids, charging a small admission fee. They turned trash into cash. The real asset wasn't the comic books themselves, it was the idea, the system they built around them. This is the power of the B quadrant. And to harness this power, you need a blueprint. This is where we enter phase 3. How to build a strong business. Rich Dad taught Robert that every successful business is built on a structure he called the B-I triangle. This is the framework that gives an idea the strength to become a real, wealth-generating asset. The B-I triangle has 8 key components. It all starts with a mission. A business built only to make money is weak. A strong business has a mission that is both spiritual and commercial. It fills a genuine need. Henry Ford's mission was to democratize the automobile. He wanted to make cars available to everyone, not just the rich. The Rich Dad Company's mission is to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. A powerful mission is the fuel that gets a business through the tough early years. The next 2 components form the outer edges of the triangle: team and leadership. Business, Rich Dad stressed, is a team sport. In school, you're taught to take tests alone. Cooperating is called cheating. In business, trying to do everything alone is a recipe for failure. A B quadrant entrepreneur builds a team of smart advisors, accountants, attorneys, brokers, and mentors. They know that to be successful, they shouldn't be the smartest person on their team. The job of the leader is to bring out the best in that team, to hold the vision, and to make the tough decisions. Inside the triangle are the 5 internal systems of the business. 1. Cash flow management. This is the lifeblood. A business can be profitable on paper but go bankrupt because it runs out of cash. Understanding how to manage the flow of money in and out of the business is the most fundamental business skill. 2. Communications management. Rich Dad used to say, cash flowing in is in direct proportion to communication flowing out. This is about sales and marketing. You have to be able to communicate the value of your product or service. This is why Robert took a job at Xerox, not for the money, but for their legendary sales training program. He had to overcome his fear of rejection to learn how to sell. 3. Systems management. A true B quadrant business runs on systems. McDonald's is a perfect example. It's a system so brilliant that it can be run by teenagers, and it delivers the same product consistently anywhere in the world. An S quadrant business relies on the owner. If the owner goes on vacation, the income stops. A B quadrant business has systems that work even when the owner isn't there. 4. Legal management. In the information age, your most valuable assets are often your ideas, your intellectual property. Protecting those ideas with patents, trademarks, and copyrights is crucial. A simple legal document, like a contract, can be the foundation of a billion-dollar enterprise. 5. Product management. Interestingly, Rich Dad believed the product was the least important part of the triangle. The world is full of great products, but it's short on great business systems. Most of us can cook a better hamburger than McDonald's, but very few of us can build a better business system. Mastering this B-I triangle is what allows an entrepreneur to take a simple idea and turn it into a powerful, self-sustaining asset. And once you've successfully built a business, you've gained the education and experience to move into phase 4, becoming a sophisticated investor. A sophisticated investor thinks differently from an average investor. They see a world of financial gray, not just black and white. They understand that there is such a thing as good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is using a credit card to buy a TV. Good debt is borrowing money to buy an apartment building that generates positive cash flow every month. They also understand good expenses and bad expenses. A bad expense is a fancy dinner that's just for pleasure. A good expense is taking your financial team out for a business dinner to strategize, an expense that is tax deductible and could make you millions. Rich Dad's revolutionary idea was that he used his expense column to get richer. The average person uses their expense column to get poorer. How? A business owner in the B quadrant can spend money on things like education, travel, meals, and even cars before they pay taxes. An employee in the E quadrant earns money, gets taxed heavily, and then has to pay for all those things with what's left over. A sophisticated investor understands how to use the tax and corporate laws to have their business buy their assets. That's what Rich Dad meant on the beach all those years ago. His business, operating under a different set of rules, could afford the land with pre-tax dollars, an advantage his poor dad, the employee, simply didn't have. This is why my rich dad wanted low income and high expenses. The average person wants high income and low expenses. The rich person wants to show as little personal income as possible and run as many expenses as possible through their business to acquire more assets. It's a completely different way of thinking. It's seeing the other side of the coin. Once you have mastered the mindset of the sophisticated investor and the skills of the inside investor, you have the potential to reach the final level, the ultimate investor. This is the person who builds a company so strong that they can take it public, selling shares to millions of other investors. This is how the young billionaires of the information age are being created. They don't just find a company to invest in, they are the company that everyone else wants to invest in. They are literally printing their own money, legally, by creating valuable shares of stock from an idea. This entire journey, from a broke veteran to an ultimate investor, is a process. It took Robert Kiyosaki 20 years. He made and lost his first million by the time he was 30. His first big business, a nylon and Velcro wallet company, was a huge success. And then a huge failure. But he didn't quit. He learned from his mistakes. Rich Dad taught him that mistakes are where the magic happens. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times before he invented the light bulb. If he'd been an employee, he would have been fired. As an entrepreneur, his failures were just steps on the path to success. The final piece of the puzzle, Phase 5, is perhaps the most profound: giving it back. Rich Dad was a quiet but massive philanthropist. He believed that true wealth came with a responsibility to contribute to society. He said, "The more people I serve, the richer I become." He built foundations, funded cancer research, and supported his church. He taught Robert that hoarding wealth was a misuse of its power. The ultimate goal of becoming rich wasn't just to have a lot of money. It was to have enough to make a real difference in the world. So, the path is clear. It begins with a mental choice. It requires a financial education that schools don't provide. It demands the courage to build a business, to create assets from ideas. And it culminates in a life of not just abundance, but also of purpose. It's the journey from being an average investor, tossed about by the whims of the market, to becoming a sophisticated investor who can thrive in any condition. It's about taking control of your financial life and, ultimately, designing the future you want. Commentary. As we look back on the journey that Robert Kiyosaki lays out in Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, it's easy to get caught up in the big, exciting ideas, building businesses, taking companies public, becoming a billionaire. But if we strip it all down, the single most powerful lesson in this entire book isn't about a specific strategy or a legal loophole. It's about a fundamental shift in identity. The book's deepest message is the challenge to move from being a consumer to being a creator. Most of the world is trained to be consumers. We consume products, we consume entertainment, and when it comes to investing, we consume assets that other people have created. We buy stocks in companies that someone else built. We buy mutual funds curated by someone else. We are, as Rich Dad would say, on the outside looking in. We are buying the tickets to the game. The 90/10ths riddle? How do you fill your asset column without buying assets? Is a profound reframing of this reality. It forces you to ask, what can I create? This is the question that defines the entrepreneur, the artist, the inventor. It's the mindset of the 10%. They aren't just playing the game. They are designing the game. They are selling the tickets. In today's information age, this idea is more accessible than it has ever been in human history. In the agrarian age, you needed to be born into land to be wealthy. In the industrial age, you needed massive amounts of capital to build factories. Today, the raw material for wealth is information, and the factory is your mind. An idea, protected by law and built out with a solid business system, the B-I triangle, can become an asset worth millions, or even billions. You don't need permission. You don't need a fancy degree. You need vision, courage, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes. This is why Kiyosaki's work is so enduring. It's not just about getting rich. It's about empowerment. It's about realizing that you don't have to be a passive participant in the economy, hoping that your 401k will be enough. You can be an active creator. So what can you do, right now, to start applying these lessons? Here are 3 simple, practical actions inspired by the book. First, make a conscious choice. Take a quiet moment and ask yourself Rich Dad's foundational question: what is my financial priority? Is it to be secure, to be comfortable, or to be rich? Be honest with yourself. There is no right or wrong answer, but knowing your true priority will bring incredible clarity to all your future financial decisions. Second, start your financial education today. Don't be intimidated. You don't need an MBA. Start with a vocabulary. Learn 1 new financial word a week. What is a PE ratio? What is cash flow? What is the difference between an asset and a liability in the way Rich Dad defines them? Words shape our reality. By expanding your financial vocabulary, you begin to see the world through the eyes of an investor. And third, consider starting a small, part-time business. And this is key. Do it not for the money, but for the education. The goal isn't to get rich overnight. The goal is to learn. Start a small online store, join a network marketing company with good training, or turn a hobby into a small service. The experience you will gain? In sales, in communication, in managing cash flow, in facing rejection and overcoming it, is the most valuable, real-world MBA you could ever get. It's in the process of building something, even something small, that you will find your entrepreneurial spirit. Ultimately, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing is a call to action. It's a challenge to stop being average, to stop thinking like an employee, and to start thinking like an owner. It's a reminder that wealth is not just about accumulating money, it's about developing the mindset and the skills to create value in the world. And that is a journey worth taking. We've covered some incredible ground today, exploring the core ideas of Rich Dad's Guide to Investing by Robert Kiyosaki. But a summary, no matter how detailed, is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. The map can show you the landmarks, but it can never replace the experience of actually walking the trails, meeting the people, and breathing the air. The real magic of a book like this happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is your map. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity or resonated with your ambitions, I encourage you to take the next step. Grab a copy of the book, because reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see your financial future. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to our channel. It tells us we're on the right track, and it ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing and learning together.